The night breaks like a thin plate, a quiet shatter you only hear if you've been listening for years. There are candles, clinking glasses, and the smug hush of rooms built to keep sound and truth in different corners. A cheer rises from strangers who love a good story, and somewhere a band leans into a familiar chord about forever. The diamond flashes, bright as a lie told in daylight, and the promise hangs in the air like perfume. Expensive, temporary, thick with someone else's debt. A notification blooms on a screen. An account hungry again, swallowing another piece of a life carefully budgeted for two. The laughter tastes metallic. In the glass, a reflection wears composure like armor. A face fixed at the seams, breathing in measured counts. Somewhere below, traffic hisses like a signing pen. Above the table, a new future is stitched. Beneath it, an older one is unpicked, thread by thread, until the fabric remembers it was never theirs to cut. Morning arrives gray and solvent, a slow-acting truth that stings when it touches open skin. Coffee cools untouched beside a laptop that exhales heat like a confession booth, and the numbers line up as if relieved to stop lying. Transactions march in tidy rows, each one a footprint across boundaries once drawn with love and good sense. The memory of last night's applause haunts the quiet, a laugh track where there should be vows. Paper whispers under fingertips, ink lifts like smoke, patterns emerge with the patience of tides. There's a rhythm in it. Take, dazzle, promise, repeat. The house plants lean toward an anemic sun, and the clock ticks in a language only the anxious understand. Somewhere, a ring sparkles over an Eggs Benedict. Here, a plan tightens its laces. When the doorbell chimes, it's not a surprise. Strategy, after all, is only grief that learned to count. The office is a rectangle of discipline, all glass and angles, the kind of place where feelings wear lanyards and stand quietly against the wall. A jacket lands over the back of a chair like a flag of truce, and the air smells faintly of toner and rain. Terms arrive in a calm voice that makes disasters sound like options. Restructure, petition, automatic stay. Each word is a rung on a fire escape, cold but dependable, leading down from a burning floor. The outline forms. Filings timed like metronome clicks. Accounts quarantined from charm. Assets mapped like a city you can finally navigate. There's talk of leverage wrapped in politeness, of pressure with clean hands. A pen rolls to the edge of the table and is caught before it falls. The kind of catch that changes a story. Across town, sunlight is an accomplice, polishing surfaces until they gleam with borrowed virtue. The narrative is packaged for strangers who want belief delivered in squares. A hand over a mouth. A caption about fate. The ring posed beside a croissant nobody will eat. Hearts cascade like confetti, each one a tiny IOU. The new fiancée rehearses sincerity between sips, tilts her head, finds the angle where triumph looks like humility. The man at her side laughs too loudly, glances at a phone he pretends not to hear humming with obligations. For a moment, the shine dims, and there is a flicker. An unedited second where appetite forgets its manners. Then the angle returns, the world forgives, and the algorithm sings a lullaby that smells like lavender and sales tax. Evening drags a darker kind of clarity across windows, a violet hour that respects decisions made in plain speech. The plan arrives in final form, measured and merciless, a velvet hammer wrapped in statutes that don't care who smiled in what photograph. There is a beauty to it, the way chaos can be made to stand still long enough to be named. Pages are signed with hands that do not shake, the ink a small river that knows its bed. Somewhere, a tuxedo is being tailored, a venue booked with the optimism of people who believe the future is theirs to lease. Here, timelines knit into a net. Here, Accounts brace for a winter of consequence. Here, a heart loosens a knot it tied itself in dreams. The last page turns, and it feels like a door that chooses you back. The day begins with the soft percussion of staplers and the hush of printer drums, an orchestra tuned to the key of consequence. Folders open like small theater curtains, revealing actors that never forget their lines. Invoices, wires, memos with cheerful subject lines hiding a pulse that runs hot and raw. Somewhere in those columns is the moment the story bent. A digit nudged. A label renamed so. A theft could wear a tuxedo and pass for celebration. Patterns link hands across months, then years, and the shape they make is not a circle but a vice. Questions file into a queue. Whose signature? Which account? Where did it go? After it smiled for the camera. Answers arrive shy at first, then bold, until even the air seems numbered. The clock posts quiet updates no one can ignore. What was once personal becomes architectural. Feeling steps back to make room for structure. Underlining replaces anger. A highlighter crown anoints the path forward, fluorescent and final. The order goes out like winter, invisible until it touches metal. A handful of keystrokes and polite emails summon a weather front nobody can outwalk. Accounts that once sang with frictionless permission now hesitate, then clamp shut with a civility that feels like judgment. The language in the notices is cool, almost tender, but the effect is thunderless catastrophe. Cards bouncing back, requests delayed, calls multiplying with the urgency of cornered animals. Somewhere, a joke falls flat at a lunch where the check suddenly matters. Somewhere else, a receptionist softens her voice and says she'll try again. The strategy hums beneath it all, not cruel, only purposeful, like a lock turning in a door that finally remembers which side is home. It's strange how silence gets loud when money stops moving. Even the elevator dings differently, as if announcing setbacks floor by floor. In a dining room curated to look effortless, performance collides with arithmetic. Candles lean into their own reflections, and the tableware gleams as if none of it has ever seen a sink. Toasts come rehearsed. Vowels warmed by ambition, and the ring stands on a napkin like a small lighthouse shouting through fog. But appetite listens to other news. A phone, face down, vibrates again, again and again, until the linen under it learns the shape of dread. Laughter gets stuck at the back of a throat that is not used to swallowing. No. The future, which earlier arrived in sequins and captions, now appears carrying receipts and a tape measure. The room's careful fragrance can't quite cover the scent of singed optimism. When the server pours, hands tremble in a way the camera will later misinterpret as excitement. Somewhere outside, sirens trail off, indifferent and correct. After hours, the city exhales its heat and leaves behind the sound of HVAC and long-distance promises. Screens glow like aquariums where schools of transactions dart, shimmer, turn as one. Within that restless blue anomalies flare, tiny comets with tales of justification that do not hold in gravity. The work is meticulous, almost devotional. Cross-reference, reconcile, prove. Coffee curls into the air like a second handwriting. A succession of late-night messages tap the glass. Explain. Confirm. Remind. The map sharpens until the journey is indisputable. Funds hopscotching through shell names and friendly vendors, looping back in a bravura that mistakes audacity for invisibility. The satisfaction that comes with proof is not joy. It is simply relief that the fog is made of numbers and can be burned away. Dawn appears at the edges of buildings, pale and unsentimental. The ledger stops breathing like a threat and becomes a witness. Morning brings signatures that feel like weather systems. Pressure dropping, storms organized into names and tracks. Letters drafted in courteous steel outline consequences with the elegance of a scalpel. Return, disclose, desist. There is no romance in it, and that is the point. Calls are placed not to negotiate feelings but to schedule outcomes. The script is brief and absolute. The paper will do the talking. The law will keep the beat. Somewhere in the pauses, a voice strains for charm that used to open doors. Now it finds hinges welded. The plan does not gloat. It only proceeds, step by measured step, until the path narrows to a single door with one correct key. Relief arrives strangely, lighter than expected, heavier than hoped, because it must pass through grief to get here. Outside, the rain stops. Inside, pens click shut, and the room holds the quiet of something about to turn. Morning looks innocent until the door learns a new rhythm. The knock isn't loud, just official, a metronome with paperwork in its pocket. Inside, the air contracts, then holds, as if the room were bracing for a wave. Envelopes arrive like pale birds, wings stamped with deadlines, and the gut understands before the mind translates. The season has changed. The script for Easy Charm misplaces its first line. The smile that worked on waiters and investors comes up empty, like a card declined in a crowded silence. The houseplants drink without tasting. The espresso bites back. Somewhere a faucet drips a slow confession into steel. The phone on the counter keeps lighting up with numbers that don't need introductions, and the spine of the day bends under their weight. When the door closes again, it sounds like a period, not a pause, and the echo sketches a narrow corridor with only one direction left to walk. The story hits glass and breeds copies. A whisper becomes a caption, then a thread, then a headline stitched with question marks. Photos that once smoldered now glare, overexposed by context. Comments arrive in weather fronts. First, the drizzle of doubt, then the sideways rain of certainty, and finally the hailstones of strangers who smell blood. The rain that once threw stars onto ceilings now throws shadows across breakfast. The algorithm, faithful only to momentum, finds a better ship and leaps. Somewhere, hands hover above a keyboard, crafting a statement with the precision of a surgeon sewing skin that refuses to forget the wound. The draft reads like a plea, but wants to sound like poise. The clock on the wall refuses edits. In the reflection of a deadened screen, pride practices humility and fails, then practices survival and almost gets it right. Afternoon stretches long enough to host an audience. Calls queue like taxis, each one a patient horn from obligations that were once charming to acquire. Voices are calm, practiced, low on sympathy, and high on arithmetic. The vocabulary narrows: collateral, delinquent, exposure. A pen taps an rhythmic confession against a legal pad, trying to find the beat that used to come so easily. The room grows smaller with each hold music loop, a carousel tune for riders without tickets. Across the desk, a calendar waits with open jaws. At the window, the weather performs indifference with spectacular accuracy. Answers lose adjectives as the hour deepens. The swagger that used to smuggle through tight spaces hits a locked turnstile and stands blinking under fluorescent truth. Somewhere in the corded hush, a realization clicks. Pressure isn't loud, it's precise. Evening drizzles a truth that rain alone can't deliver. The performance falters in the tiny places. A missed beat when the wine is poured, a laugh with no landing, the half-second delay before a touch that once knew exactly where it belonged. A phone lies face down like a guilty coin. The table reflects two people studying their reflections for answers they want like. The room smells of citrus and static. Anxiety draws maps on the inside of a throat that refuses to open for apologies. The future arrives uninvited, wearing gray and carrying clipboards. It checks the exits first. Someone reaches for a sentence and comes back with a splinter. Music from the apartment below grows louder, not in volume but in confidence, a reminder that elsewhere, people still remember how not to worry. Night tightens, and the pitch arrives dressed as relief. Terms slide across a table with the softness of velvet and the weight of iron. Settle quietly. Admit nothing. Sign here, and the storm will learn your name and pass you by. It is almost tempting, the way a mirage is almost water. But the numbers don't blink, and the paper smells of traps set by hands that believe the dark is a disguise. Silence stretches thin, then thins further, until it becomes a kind of music that clarifies the air. What feels like power finally reveals itself as delay. A chair scrapes back. A heartbeat miscounts. The city outside flicks its lights like a verdict. When the refusal lands, it isn't loud. It's clean. And in that clean edge is the first true breath, taken all day. Morning opens like a safe, the air metallic, the light exacting. What once glittered now ticks, calibrated and patient. An object recast as a timeline with a pulse. Under the hush of an HVAC that sounds like law pretending to be weather, small truths step forward in orderly shoes. Serial numbers, receipts, timestamps that refuse to be charmed. The story tries to hold its shape and fails. The corners give first, then the middle caves with a soft, relieved sound. There is no anger left to light the room, only a steadier fuel. Accuracy. The kind that makes hands stop shaking. Somewhere a kettle clicks off, unheard. The door to the past closes with the courtesy of a doorman and the certainty of a vault. It is astonishing how silence changes species. Once a hiding place, now a witness stand. The ring waits on felt, a lighthouse repurposed as a beacon for the Coast Guard. Afternoon tastes like old sugar, cloying then burnt. The performance window narrows to a keyhole, and the trick of turning a lens into sympathy begins to misfire. The audience, so recently tender, learns the word audit and says it like a prayer with teeth. Apologies drafted in velvet fonts arrive late to a truth that doesn't RSVP. The room becomes smaller with each refresh, confidence stepping backward until it finds the wall. In that cramped quiet, calculation clicks through its options and finds them priced beyond reach. Shadows lengthen across curated shelves. Trophies look like obligations that know how to pose. There is a moment, unphotographed, where the heart stutters against the cage of its own ambition and understands that angles can't outvote arithmetic. A caption is typed, deleted, typed again. Outside, clouds stack like fire. Inside, the storm finally reads its own forecast. Evening arrives with the weight of an unsigned letter. Words choose their clothes carefully and still look undressed. The voice that once wrote on confidence now walks, slower, touching every railing. The truth refuses to be announced directly. It prefers side doors and passive tense, but the shape of it is unmistakable. Responsibility turning its face to the light, calculations paying their overdue rent. The room hears the click before the lock turns. Self-preservation changing keys. Pride tries to interrupt and is asked politely to take a seat. In the pause that follows, air remembers how to move. A window lifts, and somewhere, the city exhales. What lands on paper is not poetry and not plea. It is a ledger entry written in breath. This went where? This belongs here. This is how I learned the difference. The signature looks like someone learning a new alphabet and deciding to keep it. Night folds into a harder clarity, a page with margins too narrow for improvisation. The lens that once adored angles now demands context. The script that celebrated romance meets the line item it rode in on. A statement goes live. Couched, careful, edged with survival. The room listens to the echo of a choice that seems generous until you count. And counting is the only language that cannot be argued with. The tide turns not loudly, but with the quiet sway of a crowd changing feet. Somewhere, applause thins without quite disappearing, loyalties adjusting their price. The spin machine coughs, then idles, its belts too hot to touch. The night outside is glossy and blank, perfect for projection. Inside, there is an inventory of what remains after the costumes are returned. A single light stays on, less a beacon than an audit lamp, illuminating the dust motes that used to read as sparkle. Midnight gathers the day's debris and arranges it into a path. Every step now is choreography. Call, disclose, file, breathe. The future arrives stripped of adjectives, a corridor lit by exit signs and discipline. There is a strange relief in losing the option to pretend. Choices narrow to the ones that build a floor you can stand on. Somewhere a train groans through the dark like a long, low verdict. Somewhere else a dog barks once and stops, satisfied. Paper waits in neat stacks, pens set parallel, witnesses scheduled like weather. The fear that once crackled around the edges recedes to a manageable hum, the sound a transformer makes when it's doing its job. The clock marks the hour without pity and without malice. At the window, the city offers no advice, only the example of 1,000 lit rooms that survived worse. A breath is held, then let go. The hinge turns. Forward is chosen. Morning starts with the soft percussion of stamps and the dry breath of Manila. Names become case numbers, emotions dissolve into exhibits, and the truth learns to speak in 12-point font. The courthouse hums like a hive with its own weather, a climate of consequence where gossip is useless because documents don't blush. A clerk slides a stack through a window and time fractures before filing, after filing. Sound narrows, the shuffle of paper, the tick of an old clock, the sigh of a door sealing something in. The story that lived in bruised silence now occupies a docket line anyone can request. Outside, pigeons argue over a crust. Inside, facts are fed into a machine that cannot taste but never miscounts. It is not victory, not yet, only the click of a seatbelt before turbulence. Still, the air changes. Even the elevator rides differently, pausing as if to acknowledge the weight it carries floor to floor. The posting goes live with the indifference of a traffic light. Screens bloom with links that taste like copper to those who know what they mean. A phone lights the room and drains it at once. The quiet that follows is the sound of vanity, discovering arithmetic. Words like misappropriation and stay cease to be abstractions and become hard furniture. No one can move without help. The afternoon heat presses its palm to the glass as if trying to read the temperature of the decisions inside. Somewhere a neighbor pretends not to notice. Somewhere else a doorman reads twice and looks up different. The calendar picks up speed as if dragged behind a fast car. In the reflection of a dead tablet, past and present exchange keys. The ring in its pouch is no longer an emblem but a waypoint, a glittering breadcrumb on a path that has stopped pretending to be scenic. Late day brings a negotiation with no stage lights, only the measured grammar of consequence. The line opens, voices tempered, vowels sanded down by years of dealing with storms, and the terms assemble like chess pieces finding their squares. There is no appetite for theater, only bridges or fires. The record button glows its little red truth in the corner, a witness as impartial as a clock. Statements that once strutted are now escorted in, searched for weapons, then seated. The ask is clear. The offer is cleaner. The refusal that used to feel like spine now reads like leverage bleeding value. Outside, the city performs indifference with professional grace. Inside, air conditioners hum like distant applause withheld. When the call ends, the room doesn't move. Then a breath resets the ceiling height. There is a note to memorialize, a transcript to secure, and a silence to keep, in case the future needs to hear itself again. Evening pours itself into headlines with the ease of a practiced pour. The story no longer belongs to those who lived it. It belongs to verbs that sell and nouns that sting. Yet, somewhere beneath the spin, there is a steady river carving through stone. Filings, exhibits, recordings. The stubborn geography of proof. Cameras blink at doors and find the wrong faces. Microphones extend like flowers that learned hunger. The statement prepared for this moment fits, and that is its power. It neither apologizes for breathing nor snarls for attention. It simply points to the map and invites anyone with eyes to follow the path. The crowd sways between salivation and fatigue. The night air tastes like warmed metal and rain that changed its mind. When the last question lands, it is not a trap, but a tired echo. The answer is a simple light, switched on. What exists, exists. Night tightens the world to the size of a waveform. In a room that smells of dust and late progress, a file plays. 6 minutes that collapse a year. The voices are unmistakable, not for their sound, but for their angles. Entitlement posing as strategy, affection invoiced, a future financed with a past it did not earn. Silence afterward expands like a bruise finding daylight. No one reaches for dramatics. There is no need. The track lays rails. The train will come. On the desk, a printout of balances sits with corners weighted by paper clips like tiny anchors. A pen clicks once, then not again. Outside, a siren ascends and fades, uninterested. Inside, the ledger becomes a portrait. The room learns a new faith, not in miracles or punishments, but in sequence. Step, step, step. Breath returns deeper than before, and with it a clarity that tastes almost sweet. Tomorrow has its orders. Morning doesn't arrive, it forecloses. The air smells of cardboard and lemon cleaner. The scent of lives edited down to what fits in a trunk. Screens bloom with listings that once would have been captions. A watch described by millimeters, a car reduced to trim and mileage, a promise photographed from flattering angles and priced to move. The pace is frantic without speed, a treadmill of undoing where each step returns you to the same grim view. Voices on speaker speak kindly about liquidation the way surgeons speak kindly about amputation. The rooms are loud or empty, echoes tallying decisions as if they were coins. Every object insists on its receipt, its provenance, its quiet accusation. The coffee is bitter and correct. Outside, a sky the color of filing cabinets hangs low. Inside, a heart trades volume for precision and learns how to mark boxes without shaking. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Said in bubble wrap and tape. Afternoon compresses into a windowless hour where time is measured by the rattle of air vents and the click of pens that never sign anything easy. A circle of chairs holds the ritual. Creditors, counsel, the precise choreography of questions that steal heat from the blood. The story is retold as arithmetic until even memory nods. There is a discipline to this kind of listening. Breath shallow, eyes forward, hands open over a table, so no one can accuse them of hiding. The questions are simple, and that is why they hurt. The answers are simpler, and that is why they matter. Somewhere between identify and explain, pride chips like old paint. Somewhere between when and why, the floor stops pretending to bounce. It is not humiliation, not exactly. It is gravity rediscovered in public. When the session closes, the room exhales as one organism. The door opens onto light that has not earned the right to be called mercy. Evening drags its feet across tile and leaves a scuff. The conversation that was deferred until after the storm arrives during it, because storms do not wait for courtesies. The house is smaller without denial. Walls creep closer as if to hear better. It is not love's autopsy that takes the breath away, but the invoice for its staging. What the dinners cost, the travel, the counsel, the days someone worked 2 jobs of endurance. There is a pause that feels like a cliff edge. Then a truth walks in without knocking. This was not partnership, it was procurement. Silence, once a balm, shows its teeth. The words used are careful, stripped of theater, designed to be admissible to the future. No cataclysm, no lamp thrown, no shattered glass for storytellers to admire. Only a clean dismantling. an almost gentle severing that leaves fingerprints of resolve. Somewhere, the elevator dings with the cheerful idiocy of machines. Inside, a life rotates on new hinges. Night puts on a suit and hammers a gavel. The cadence is relentless, a chant that converts memory into lot numbers and applause into proceeds. The items glide under lights too honest to flatter. Art that once pretended to mean something. Furniture that carried quiet secrets. Devices that lit up rooms where trust dimmed. The crowd murmurs in the language of opportunity, not malice. It is strange, the way strangers can be so gentle while participating in erasure. The screen tallies bids with the cheerfulness of a scoreboard. The total crawls upward like a fever that, for once, helps. In the back of the room, someone breathes in time with the increments, finding an accidental meditation in the arithmetic of loss or claim. When the gavel falls for the last time, an order returns to the universe that is not justice but is close enough to walk beside it without speaking. Past midnight, the city hums its indifferent lullaby, and the world feels oddly level. Papers lie aligned. Accounts at last resemble their names, and the future, smaller, sturdier, fits in the span of two quiet hands. Relief doesn't arrive as triumph, but as the absence of corrosion, the way water tastes when the metal is gone from the pipes. There will be more steps, of course. Endings are merely junctions that learned better manners. But the worst has converted into tasks. Breath deepens. The ring is a line item, the scandal a file, the grief a ledger that now balances in a column labeled paid. Outside, a truck downshifts on wet asphalt and keeps going. Inside, the lights switch off room by room like a city coming home to itself. Sleep, when it finally accepts the invitation, feels less like escape and more like a signed receipt. Morning arrives without spectacle, a clean page that does not ask to be signed in blood. The air holds the hush of a library where the last overdue book has finally come home, and the clock ticks like a small, competent engine. There is work, but it no longer impersonates penance. It is simply motion. Emails answered, keys returned, a calendar rethreaded with obligations that keep their promises. The mind inventories what remains. A body that slept, a room that forgives, a future that prefers nouns to fireworks. Across the table, papers wait in squared stacks, no longer threatening to multiply when the lights go out. The ring's an entry, the loss a ledger, the ache a weather system that has rained itself empty. A kettle clicks, steam rises like a blessing with no church to obey. When the window opens, the breeze does not smell like endings. It smells like dust leaving. Afternoon lays gold on old streets and invites a different pace. The kind that counts lampposts instead of problems. The city stops being a courtroom and becomes a map again. Each block returns a borrowed detail. A bakery that overbutters on purpose. A bookstore that files its hope alphabetically. A park bench that knows the angle of a shoulder at rest. The spine lengthens without asking permission. A text arrives and doesn't detonate. A laugh happens and doesn't barter. There is space for a thought that is not defense, for a plan that is not triage. The body remembers how to spend an hour without receipts, how to take inventory in sensations. Heat on the cheek, weight of a coat, the tap of shoes that aren't fleeing. A bus sighs to a halt. A dog startles at pigeons. Somewhere a saxophone tries the same note until it believes it. The day answers, in its quiet way, keep it. Evening folds the day along familiar creases and reveals what was hidden in the simplest sentence. You can come back to yourself without asking anyone's permission. The home that once held strategy now practices a lesser art, comfort, unremarkable, and perfect. A lamp turns on at the level of a heartbeat. Shelves accept their revised population. The mirror offers a face that doesn't need cross-examination. There is a list on the counter, but it is short and kind. Plant soil, fresh sheets, call the friend who didn't require proof. In the quiet, a thought knocks and is admitted. There was love. There was harm. There was crap. Nothing erases anything. Everything can be carried with cleaner hands. The night doesn't audition for meaning. It just takes its seat. Somewhere below, a neighbor practices piano and misses a note by a breath. The mistake lands like a bird on a railing. It stays. It does not ruin the song. Night tightens to a conversation with no audience and plenty of witnesses. The heart unpacks a truth it has been careful with. Rage bought time. Precision bought safety. But neither was ever meant to live here permanently. What remains is smaller and therefore truer. Forgiveness arrives without fanfare. A letter that says only I release you and never mails itself. Accountability keeps its seat at the table. Pity is excused. In the ledger of what to keep, dignity stays and spectacle is declined. The future is not a parade. It is a sidewalk you can trust. A glass of water beads like calm on the tongue. The phone rests face down and remains a tool instead of a judge. The window shows a city that will not love you back. And that's fine. You did not ask it to. In the long, even breath that follows, a life switches from survival to stewardship, and the room grows half a size larger. Dawn returns with the untheatrical mercy of routine. Coffee, shoes, door. An old spell relearned. The elevator mirrors do not accuse. They simply reflect a person on time for a day they chose. Outside, the air is commuter cool and forgiving. The city hands over its tasks like folded shirts. Here, carry these. They're yours. A building lobby welcomes without applause. A security badge clears with a soft green nod. Up above, a workspace waits with a chair that remembers the height it liked before the storm. A screen wakes into a horizon of work that is neither distraction nor punishment, just honest weather. There is an email to send that does not tremble, a meeting to run that does not masquerade as trial, a lunch to eat that does not taste like strategy. Somewhere, traffic forgets your name, and for once that feels like a benediction. Steps measure out a cadence that belongs to you. Forward is no longer chosen. It's inhabited.